Welcome to the Modern Hippie podcast, where we'll be exploring all of my favorite boundary-pushing people and topics surrounding consciousness, psychedelics, mental performance, functional medicine, living in alignment, and so much more. I'm your host, Barrett Perlman, a former pro wakeboarder turned body worker, energy healer, and well, a modern hippie. And I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Modern Hippie podcast. I am joined today by my friend Rick William, who is a purpose coach, somatic therapist, and meditation teacher. And Rick supports many high-performance business owners, artists, investors, coaches, and change makers in leading heart-centered lives. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rick.
It is an absolute pleasure and honor to be here with you, Barrett. Looking forward to diving in.
Yeah. So you and I have met through the training we're doing with Dr. John Churchill in what is year one of the Planetary Dharma Buddhist teachings. Do you think you're going to go all 4 years?
I do. It's like, what are we in, like coming into month 2? And I'm just like, everything that we've been learning is just like super aligned and deepening just so many other teachings and pieces of work that I've learned on the path. And at this point, I'm like, yes, I'm in for the 4 years. What about you?
Yeah, me too. Oh, absolutely. I think even from the moment I heard Dr. John on the Aubrey Marcus podcast, I was like, who is this person? I need these teachings. I need to know more. Like whatever it is that he knows applies to where I'm ready to navigate next.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you find him?
Same way. Like yeah, what was it? I think I was just on YouTube and it came up in my search. And I hadn't listened to one of Aubrey's podcasts in a while, but I just got the sense. I was like, I think I'm meant to listen to this one. And listened to it. I was in New York at the time. And prior to that, I was just on the phone with one of my good friends. And I was like, you know what? I'm really feeling like I'm ready to take my learnings and path to the next level. And I'm looking for someone or something that can help synthesize shamanic plant medicine work with Eastern teachings, with the psychological and somatic approaches that I've been learning from a therapeutic standpoint. And I'm really looking for someone. And I literally had that conversation maybe a day or two before, heard that podcast, and I was just like, is this it? I was like, I think it might be. And then went on the website and then did a few of the kind of weekend trainings, and they were awesome. And I was just like, yeah, this is it. And then, sent the email, signed up, and here we are in a beautiful group together on a freaking 4-year journey.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know that I've ever been on a pre-declared 4-year journey of anything other than maybe like college. And even then, like almost didn't finish that, I'm an Aries. And so we're really great at starting things and not finishing them. But like being on a 4-year plan for something is kind of like scares the shit out of me. Like 4 years ago, my life was so different. And, but I can only imagine where it's going now with these teachings. Like, I don't know if you find yourself sort of in 7-year cycles. But sort of my healing journey started in like 2015, really like the depth of diving into it. And now 2022 was like this massive unlocking for me. And now everything's like exponential. And I'm like, holy shit. And so
yeah,
I'm curious, where did your journey start towards self-improvement and betterment? And
the one, like I keep going earlier on the day. Like the more I've explored it, like at first I was like, oh, it was this experience when I was 19. But then like, as I've actually like sat and thought about that question a little bit longer, I'm like, when I was like 12 or 13, I started listening to self-hypnosis tapes by a guy called Paul McKenna. He's like a famous hypnosis in the UK, but I think he's globally known. He's been in Mind Valley and these types of things. And I listened to this hypnosis back then, and it was like how to be successful. I'm like 12 or 13. And I was playing video games at the time, Halo 2 and Halo 3. And I was like, I was like getting pretty decent at it, but I was like, there was like leagues and people were playing it competitively, and I listened to those tapes at the time. Anyway, after listening, I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it was linked, but soon after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to phone every single energy drinks company in the United States one by one until I get our team sponsored, so that we can fly to the States. I was in England at the time and play these
Mm-hmm.
video games. Anyway, I did that, and that worked, and
Who ended
that
up
was a super
sponsoring
cool
you?
experience to have. A company called Liquid Lightning. I don't think they're
Okay.
around anymore, but they also sponsored a band called Breaking Benjamin, who happened to be,
Oh yeah.
they were like a, do you know Breaking Benjamin?
Yeah, they're like a punk rock kind of,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And anyway, they played the Halo theme. They just happened to sponsor that band, who happened to play the Halo 2 or Halo 3 soundtrack. So there was like, they already knew what the game was. So they're just like, cool, yeah, you guys are doing that. We'll sponsor you. And we got, yeah, all our flights and hotels and everything paid for. So it was super cool. Anyway, so like that's kind of that's when I started, I guess, doing personal development work, or realized that I could change my mind and thoughts around certain things. And then, I actually started, I think I started like messing with like salvia and mushrooms at maybe like 15, 16,
Oh wow.
and had some pretty profound experiences then, um, which just had me, tap into obviously altered states of consciousness, and had a big experience when I was 19, which completely changed the trajectory of my life. And you know, yeah, I think just from there, just realizing that I had the ability to really transform aspects of myself, including addictions and different things, through both plant medicine and meditation, and later leading on into my mid 20s to like therapy and coaching and these types of things too.
So I'm curious, what were your addictions? What was going on for you that you felt so healed from after that ceremony, or that changed everything?
I think there was many. It was like I think one of the things that I notice about the ways that I would try and soothe is that they improved over time, meaning that the ways that I soothed when I was in my teenage years was with like, you know, cannabis, like overusing cannabis, overusing
Mm.
cocaine at times. Uh, what else? Yeah, they were the two main ones that really weren't great for me. Nicotine, other times,
Mm.
leading into resolving those, and then it would move into food. So I would oversoothe myself with overeating. Even though I'm very slim, I could still put away enormous amounts of food. um, and yeah, just like there's the soothing. I realized I was just soothing myself, and as I could begin to self-regulate and heal and move the pain that I was internally feeling out of my system, just the need to soothe just stopped. And those things I was soothing with would just improve and improve and improve as my skill to be able to regulate myself and give myself what I was needing actually came online. And then the things just disappeared as they naturally do.
Mm. Wow, that's powerful. And I think a common thing that happens when people start doing psychedelics, or with especially with intention behind it, or breathwork practices. I mean, you're talking about regulating ourselves, and for anyone who's not really familiar with what that means, it's like our autonomic nervous systems that are kind of in control of how we respond to the situations around us. And even something as simple as like a deep belly breath and letting it out slowly can immediately change your energy and how your body's ready to respond to the world around you. And so I have no idea how old you are now, so how long ago this stuff was. How old are you?
So, and that was beautifully put, in terms of regulation. Yeah, I'm 34 now, 35 next 2 months in May. So 34 now, nearly
Okay.
35. So that kind of puts into context. So I'd say I really started kind of the deeper work at age kind of 19, 20. That's when I really got into personal development, which was
Mm.
more personal development esque initially. And then age kind of 24, 25 is when I really started going deeper. But um, with, deeper work with plant medicines and somatic work and therapy and stuff like that.
If you had to pick three of like the tools that helped you in the most in the beginning, what would those three tools be?
Mm. Well, I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and if I could go back and speak to my like 21-year-old self and just give him
Mm.
a better map of where to head, I would start him with attachment. And I'd be like, just understand everything you need to around attachment, because that's the foundation upon which everything else is built. Like, just understand it, like do your research, find out about this field and this topic and get support around that, because every other piece of growth work or spiritual development work you're going to do is going to be rooted here, because that is the initial traumas of disconnection or lack of attunement begin at this stage of development. So just, doing the corrective work there makes the most sense. You're starting from a stronger foundation. Then I would say the second piece would be learn how to emotionally regulate, meaning, I tell them to go learn about polyvagal theory and understand how to move your state from disconnection, essentially, back into connection. Learn how to be in states of stress and bring that back into connection and love and safety. Learn how to be in states of depression with yourself or shut down or isolation, and learn how to bring that back up into your heart, back into connection, so that you'll no longer be running from these feelings that feel uncomfortable to you. You'll be able to learn how to work with those in real time, so that you'll stop reaching and grabbing for things that are leading you to further disconnection from yourself and others. So second will be emotional regulation. I don't know if I can answer in three, so I'm going to go for three.
Go for
Would
it.
be learn how to, learn how to train your mind. We've been talking a lot about metacognition and self-reflective awareness and attention. I think, learn how to meditate well, which is what we're up
Mm.
to for the next 4 years. We're really deepening in that. And then the fourth piece would be learn how to communicate, like learn the art of communication, not from a marketing standpoint, which my 20-something-year-old self would have been like totally about, but like learn the art of relational communication, which will also help you in your business. And that's just going to that's the foundation for everything. It's how you're relating and communicating to yourself, but it's also how you're communicating and communicating and being in relationship with, everyone in your life. And, it's like the foundation. Like, if you can self-regulate and you can attune to your own needs and, be able to course correct in real time, and you can communicate, and, you're like set
Hmm.
for as to like build an epic human. So like, that's what I'd go back and be like, master those things before like jumping onto anything else. I'd even say like, stop doing any other exploration until you have like a level of understanding of those four components. Because, I would find myself initially getting into ceremonies or shadow work or breath work, and I would like be discovering things about myself that I didn't have the capacity to hold myself.
Mm.
And that was like, I would say sometimes destabilizing for me in terms of like some of the material that would come up, or my nervous system would be so dysregulated, but I hadn't learned how to bring it back into connection, which to me is like the equivalent of like, we want to go free diving together. I know you've got some history in the water. So if we're going to go
Yes.
free diving together, you'd be a great person to go with because you have history in the water. So yes. So like, get people on board who are like able to do what you're doing. But like, if we're going to go free diving together and we just go out and jump into like some little island off the coast here in Costa Rica, and we try and dive down, we are going to get like smashed. Versus like, actually, like, let's start here in the pool and let's just learn how to do some breath holds on land, lying down. Then let's
Mm-hmm.
take it into the shallow end and like hold the pool at the end and see how long we can hold our breath for. And then let's maybe go into the deep end and see if we can hold it there underwater. And then like next week or the weekend after, we'll go out and we'll practice in some water. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
starting with a lake before going out into the ocean. We take it step by step. And I think it's the same with the inner work, right? We want to learn how to put our, mask on first, so that we can learn how to regulate our emotions before diving into like the super deep end. And I would definitely recommend to myself that I would do that, because that would really set myself up for all of those amazing containers to be able to, one, go deeper because I would feel safer, But two, if I find myself in a pickle or material arises that could be challenging, I'll feel like, oh, wow, like I have the capacity to deal with this, which would fill me with the sense of empowerment versus like, oh my God, how do I work with this? And then having to figure all that out, which was fine because I eventually figured it out. But, we're talking about how to do it more elegantly. I would be like, yeah, definitely learn those skills first.
I mean, I'm so impressed that you just really threw out there what if I was to reflect on some of my journey and the most powerful things I've learned, like you just knocked it out of the park. That really being able to self regulate and course correct in all of the circumstances is a very powerful tool, and especially in plant medicines, like you said, when you start to see those parts of your shadows that might not work for you. You had me kind of reflecting on what do I do and when that happens. But I landed myself in therapy at 8 years old. That was like the first time that I wanted to kill myself. And so I kind of came up through therapy my whole life with those self-reflective
Mm.
questions. But yeah, there was also a course I took in college on interpersonal communication. And I have always hailed it as one of the most important classes I ever took in my entire life, because it taught just basic things like how to speak to someone and own your truth without attacking them in your line of questioning, how to
Mm.
create like safe containers to have conversations. Um, and yeah, so many of those things are just like, I can't believe we're not teaching it. Can't believe we're not teaching that. We're not teaching taxes. We're not teaching credit. We're not teaching meditation. um, a lot of those things that are beautiful, just beautifully said. And so when did you, well, I'm curious, when did you begin with ayahuasca?
That's a great question. And yeah, like so beautifully put. And I would add yet to that. We're not teaching them yet. I think
Mm,
our generation, our timers, I think that's probably what we're being a part of. I think that's what's probably going to manifest itself and already is manifesting itself. Like, here in Costa Rica, a lot of those schools are beginning to take some of these things on, and knowing the work that Dr. John and Nicole are planning, like they're also building a school, but they're teaching the adults first, which also makes sense.
mm,
Right? Because if you got amazing children being told all these things and they go home to mom and dad, and mom and dad have no idea about any of these things, then a lot of the work that could be done in the educational system could also be undone. So like, how do we solve that problem at
mhm,
every level? I think that's also exciting to me. And to answer your question, um, the first time I drank with ayahuasca, I was 25. So I'm 34 now. And yeah, it completely changed my life. I was running a business that I started when I was 20 in the health and fitness industry, which is how I knew of Aubrey. And
mm,
um, yeah, I had ran that. I was working for like 60, 70 hours a week and just like, going for like a very traditional model of success that I hadn't fully thought through at a heart and values level. And was finding myself just like burned out and just like, what the F is like my life doing here? Like, what am I doing? Like, I have many of the things that I thought that I wanted to achieve. I'm in fitness magazines and all of these things. And I think it's probably the similar for you and wakeboarding, maybe in some senses. But I'd love to hear about that too.
mm,
Um, and, I was like, yeah, what is this? So I was like, I remember like when I was 19, 20, I had that amazing experience that kind of course corrected me. I was like, cool, like I'll go back to the plants and see if they can give me some deeper answers that I'm not seeing here. And I went out to Europe that time from North England, and yeah, it was just like could completely see through the patterns, saw all of the patterns of how I was living, where it came from and its roots. Was able to work through a good chunk of that and got some direction on where to go next, which was like, it was pretty much like, it's time to leave and exit the business
mm,
ASAP. And it guided me to go travel the world and just meet all of the people that I found, inspiring and had connections with. So Aubrey was actually one of those people. So I went around, and I'm like 25, 26, and went and just met all the people that were inspiring me at the time and interviewed them for like a video style podcast. Um, and got to meet just so many incredible people. And from that, just like both insight and understanding just started to happen. And I also just started to just be around people who were living the type of lives that were really interesting to me. And I got to just meet other people from that, and it kind of just unfolded naturally from like that place forward. So it was like a super scary move to make at the time, because I'd been building this business for like 5 or 6 years and putting everything into it, to being like, you know what, like I have to choose my heart and soul over, staying here for the money. Like I just have to choose my heart, and I just went for it. And, it was definitely scary, but over time it eventually paid off.
And now, when most people sort of find their way to work with you I guess you work with them as a coach, is that kind of the place that they're at, where they're interested in more heart-centered leadership? And yeah, what's the common theme amongst people when they find you?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. The common theme is, yeah, somewhat similar. It depends on the person, but I definitely tend to meet people when they're in that transition. They've made it as an artist, an investor, a business person, or they've been like crushing it within their career, and they just are sensing like just something's not right. Like the fulfillment that I'm getting for this pursuit is, you know, not matching up with, the amount of effort that I'm putting into this. Like it's just
Mm.
survival stuff. It's not fulfillment stuff. And um, having them step into that and, work through some of the developmental processes that are missed in order for that person to feel safe enough, essentially, to claim what they need and want in life and pursue it. Because often we're pursuing things because we want to impress mum, peers, or we have a deep sense of unsafety, and we plow all of that tension into trying to create safety through financial means, which can work up into a degree. Like we can do that. You can like plow a lot of energy in and solve that problem, but
Mm.
it only solves it at one level. It doesn't actually solve the emotional angst that we feel from feeling deeply unseen, unheard, unloved, unsafe. Because that's the inner work will solve that. And then when you pair those two things together, you have highly competent people who are now heart led and driven to make change and impact through also being the embodiment of that. Like, we talk about the the training that we're in for the next years, and we could call it planetary dharma, or we could call it planetary purpose from like a more Western perspective.
Mm.
Like that's how I see it. It's like planetary purpose, which I think we're all a part of. I'm like, I think that's the shift we're in.
Mm.
All of us,
Yeah,
everyone listening, we're moving into that, right?
exactly. We're like stepping into that next level of consciousness. I know, even on my journey, I was describing the other day, like the way that I exist in the world now. My younger self would have never believed me that it was possible. Like I would have been like, I've seen that in movies. That's like on that one superhero movie, sure. But I literally feel like I walk around in this sphere all the time, and I keep my energy and my knowledge and my consciousness in this like sphere around me all the time. And I was specifically at this wolf sanctuary on Monday. That's kind of out in Palmdale, called Wolf Connection. And we got this private tour, and we got to meet all these different wolves. And it was so powerful. And we even went in this like medicine circle where they do ceremonies there. And as soon as we entered, all the wolves started howling. And it was the only
Wow.
time we were there for like 3 hours that they were all 30 something of them howling. And it was just this incredible medicine. And as we're sort of walking away, and the instructor, the tour, our tour leader, Lori, was like, "So, what do you think? How's it going?" And I was just like, I wish I could write in a journal, but I keep this energetic journal around me at all times that I'm imprinting all of these moments in right now. So I feel like I'm constantly walking around in this different frequency of space where I can pull all these really impactful memories at any given time, and remember them just like the moment, because I've ingrained them into my source code. But
I
Yeah,
love
like
that
that.
idea. I've never heard of anyone doing that. Like I've heard of memory techniques where people create rooms, but I love the way that you're like keeping those impactful memories like in your field. I'm like, that's I've never heard anyone mention that. I'm like, that's super. You should teach that. Like, let me know how you're doing that.
Okay. Yeah. Now that you mentioned, I'm like, because it's just, I want to write. I wish I could write. It's the same thing. Like, I wish I could read books. I wish I was better at it. I'm way better at audiobooks. But you're like in those moments, and it just imprints into the world around me, and then it's something that
Mm,
I feel myself carrying with me everywhere. That's a really beautiful experience. But yeah, I think you're right, and that we're shifting into this next dimension. And what I love about that is that every time that we impact someone, or someone learns breath work for the first time, or someone finally understands meditation, or someone taps into flow state, there's no going back. Like, no one's
mm,
going backwards per se, in the sense that they've touched it and they'll never touch it again. It's like, okay, now there's like one more person that's a little better equipped to navigate that space in the moment, and to self-regulate, and to, once you know about like your attachment styles, for instance, there's no unknowing of that. And yeah, I just like recently got into a relationship, and I haven't been in a relationship in 6 years. And so it's very exciting for me. And he's a very conscious person. And one of the questions he asked me on like our first time hanging out or something was like, "What's your attachment style?" And I was like, you know what attachment styles are? This is great." And I was like, "Well, I tend to sit very stable unless I get poked, and then I'm very anxious attachment." And I was like, "What's yours?" And he's like, "Avoidant attachment." And I was like, "Oh, great." And he's like, "But I'm conscious of it. I'm aware of it. And I try not to sit in that attachment style." And yeah, it kind of came up and reared its ugly head about a weekend or so, where I was like, "Oh, it would be nice to just feel wanted by him." And like 2 days went by and I didn't hear from him. And I was like, "Ah," and he had something he was going through. But, so I was trying to give him space. And finally I just left him a message being like, I'm honoring what you're going through, and that, space feels really good for you in this. And at the same time, I'm also sacredly honoring that it's putting me in my anxious attachment space. And so these two things are coexisting in my field now. And I just want to vocalize it, and maybe in vocalizing it, I'll just feel better. I don't know, but do with it what you will. And he was a total gem, and was just like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, call me on my
mm,
shit, please. Like, I don't want to do that to you, and I want to be more conscious of it."
mm.
Um, and so yeah, I was like, wow, these conscious humans we're getting to increase in numbers. And I'm curious if that's part of what drew you to Costa Rica, like the community down there, or what took you down there?
That's a great question. Yeah, it was just like, understanding how impactful both environment and community is on my mental well-being, you know, being in a space where these types of conversations, where we're talking about attachment and consciousness and plant medicine and all of these types of things, they're super interesting to me. Like, some people are into cars, football, like whatever your thing is, right? Like, I'm just into this. Like, it's just the thing that I'm into, and I love it,
Me too.
and I see it being a part of my journey for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And it's fun. It's like I'm not in a race to get anywhere, and also, like, there's work to be done. So,
Right.
but it's just like, it's just a fun exploration for me. I love it. It's been profoundly beneficial in my life, and I want to be around people who are interested in similar things, because it just makes conversation, connection more cohesive. And
Mm.
I when I'm having family, which is in my plan in the kind of next phase of my life, is that I want them to be able to be around similar like-minded people, and to be in schools where these types of things can exist, and these kinds of conversations are normal, because that's going to have an impact on a multitude of things. So, like, yeah, basically just to make my life easier by being around like-minded community is the main reason.
Beautiful. I've been tossing around the idea of moving to Costa Rica, and I've had two sort of different swings on it, which were I'll meet my life partner and then we'll figure out Costa Rica together, and or I'll just wait until I'm like really called there. And one of my mentors has suggested he might be building a retreat center down there, which is not ironically Dr. John as well, but Hamilton's sort of been thinking about it. And so I was like, oh God, if he went to Costa Rica, I would absolutely move there. But
So you got two of your
it's just,
mentors moving here.
dude, it's a sign, right?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, it's
sign.
pretty good.
But yeah, my partner isn't doesn't love humidity, and so I'm not sure how well Costa Rica would go over for long periods of time.
I can get that, but air conditioning is great, and
That's true.
it's not super. It's like there's places in the States that I've been that feel more humid, like Florida maybe, and like Hawaii would feel way more humid. Bali feels way more humid. I don't experience Costa Rica as like I'm never like walking around with like a wet shirt or wet t-shirt or it might have to be. I would recommend it as a humidity experiment. You create like a humidity experiment container to see how it goes.
Well, speaking of these containers of yours, you and I were talking a little bit before we started this interview, and you're sharing with me some beautiful containers around dating, and I was really interested in what we were starting to get into, and I'd like to kind of dive back into how one could approach a relationship with the idea of setting containers as you move through it. So tell me a little bit about your process with that.
Yeah, well, the process began before that process. So I'll start at the beginning. So, you know, like many of us, I wanted to get super clear on exactly what I wanted in a relationship. And I've heard lots of people do that, but I was just like, I'm going to get like super, super clear, like clearer than I've ever got before in terms of like what I'm looking for, in terms of like all the different areas, like values, sexual intimacy, communication, hobbies, practices, nutrition, like just like all of the things that I knew were important for me for a relationship to be cohesive, not in like a super controlling way, but just in like a realistic way of understanding what would and wouldn't work for me. And just like dreaming into that. So I was super clear, like crystal clear on what I wanted, what would work for me, what wouldn't. So that was kind of the foundation. So I like really knew what I wanted. And that was just from like, 30 something years of trial and error. Let's just call it that. And super grateful for all of the lessons from every past relationship, genuinely.
Yeah.
Every relationship has been a beautiful lesson. And just compiling that into, a giant note, which I actually have on my phone and would update it at all moments. Like I would go around and I would, meet different people. And even it was just like, a woman in a restaurant and I see a specific quality, like not necessarily, attraction per se like that, but I would, appreciate a quality. I'm like, oh, that's a really important quality for me. And I would just keep this as like a live document that was created over many months. And so that like build the foundation. So I was like super clear on what I wanted, which I think from life creation or manifestation standpoint, depending on how you want to look at it, like I think that's really important, like know what we want. So I was super clear on what I wanted. And then when I met my partner, it was just super evident. I was just like, like I felt it, at both like a heart level, a mind level, meaning like it made sense based on what I was looking for, and also felt it at a chemistry level as well. So like all three of the major centers were like a tick, a yes. And then from there, at each stage of our relationship, we've set containers, meaning like, what is it we're looking to discover at first? So like at first it was like, who is this other individual that I'm, beginning to be in relationship with, and, working out what we were exploring during that specific phase. in order for the relationship to go to the next stage. So we both got super clear on what that was. And once we'd moved through that phase and we were clear on that, so we had a conversation at the beginning and a conversation at the end, and we put like rough time frames on when we would have these conversations. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that conversation, then we would create the next phase in container. And container 2, after we'd worked out like, this is like pretty awesome and there's so much congruency here at every level. And we like really felt it in our hearts, but we were like, cognizant humans being like, does this actually work at a technical level? And it was like, yes, yes, yes. Okay, brilliant. Like the next phase was, seeing how that would work in real life. Like how would we actually operate in relationship together? So the next experiment was like, can we live together and how will that look? And what are we looking to explore during this time, from such as, understanding, can we communicate well together when we're in conflict? Can we, keep, even more spice and intimacy alive in our connection, and so on and so forth. So we set the container. And then once that was done, we worked out, okay, well, what's the next container? Okay, well, now it's, creating a community and like a deeper life together in Costa Rica. And, step by step, we just like set new containers, and we both have intentions and explorations of what we're looking to experience and explore and discover during that time. And then, we set rough dates on it in terms of like when we're going to check back in. And, we just have a general check-in of like, what worked, what didn't work. Is there anything that hasn't been said? And can we have a conversation around that? And, what's exciting next? Like, what's the next level of relationship and intimacy that we're going into that would be interesting for us both to explore? So I know for me, doing it in this way is like really kept an aliveness to the connection. And
Mm-hmm.
it's made every phase of the relationship feel intentional, and has helped, I guess, navigate the questions that sometimes might take years to discover. We've been able to discover them much faster because we've been intentional about finding those pieces out. So, we're both in our 30s now, and, learned enough about ourselves up until this point to know enough about what we want and don't want. And, because I want children and she wants children, then there is also biological clocks ticking. So we're just trying to, just be more mindful. Like, we don't just, when you're in your early 20s, it like doesn't really matter if like these next relationships don't work. As soon as you get in your 30s and you wanted to create a healthy, lasting relationship, then these things become way more important. So just allowing them to be as important as they are in this next life phase for me, which is also exciting. It's like, oh, cool. There's more at stake here, which also makes it more interesting.
What's your zodiac sign?
Taurus.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. I'm actually older than you. I'm 36, and I don't want kids. And so that's also an interesting paradigm to exist in, because kind of like you said, like in the 20s, like it didn't really matter. I never even looked at anyone in my 20s. Like they would be the person I would spend the rest of my life with. I was always just like, you'll be cool for a few months, a year, whatever. Sounds good. And then it's like, as I've been looking at spending the rest of my life with someone, I started to have a policy where I wouldn't date anyone who wanted to have kids, because that meant obviously there would be a definitive end. But there were definitely some people I got really hurt by in the last couple of years who, not hurt by, but that I allowed myself pain over, in continuing to see them despite knowing that, and then having them, have the balls to be like, hey, this is a major deal breaker, and it should be a deal breaker for the both of us. And um, lots of, as I call them, failures to launch, where they just kind of airplane that never takes off.
Mm.
But I
Yeah,
love those
I feel you.
containers. I love those containers, and it makes me really interested and curious to now talk to my partner and be like, what kind of containers could we create? And he's an artist, so I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up with these wild containers.
You
It's
could
very
paint your
fun.
containers as well, right? Like,
Yeah, we should.
like dream into it, make it fun. We've definitely got more creative with it as time has gone, and it just makes it fun. It's like we're Like we get to create these games with each other if we want, or we can just like, get into a relationship and just take it step by step. Maybe that's fun for people, but for me, it seems it's more fun to be like, like what's this next phase? Like, where are we actually in time and space, and how can we make the most of this opportunity that we have together, and see it as an exploration where we both get to bring our attention, our love, our intention into everything that we're creating. And I don't know, when I've done that with anything in my life, whether it be my business or a ceremony, it seems to work more cohesively or create better results when I bring that level of intentionality and care to something.
Mm. And what's her zodiac sign?
Aries.
Oh, that's why I kind of remind you of, or you think we'll get along so well. Because she's fucking great.
This is true.
Oh, that's rad. What's been one of your favorite container? Like, what did you find to be one of the most exciting containers that you guys created?
Trying to think back, like just time moves so fast and so much happening with like life, work, and business and all of these things. So, what was one of the most exciting containers? The part when I went to New York to see if we could actually live together in a one bedroom studio in the center of New York
Oh
was
my
like
gosh.
probably the most interesting, and we were really exploring our intimacy, and our sexual relationship there, and taking that to new levels. And that was just like super juicy, and had experiences there that were up there and the most profound experiences that I've had in my life. And psychedelics would also be
Mm.
among some of those. And just like, I'm like, wow, like I did not know that that was possible, and had to go on like a whole learning journey to be like, and it's like when you have your first, I don't know, one of your first big medicine style experiences, you're like, what was that? Like, like how did I just melt into the universe? If there's no context for that, it can be like almost overwhelming. And it was like there was some of those experiences that were emerging, and I was like, like I got to go study and find out what was actually happening here so that I can understand it at a deeper level of how like some of these things are possible in terms of just like exploration without medicine, like
Mm.
sexual alchemy, I guess. And you know sex is medicine in many ways, especially if we bring intentionality and our full presence to it. What can emerge in that space would completely blow my 20-some-year-old's mind. It would be like, he'd be like, I was like, and like some of the things was like, safety is going to create the best sex of your life. My 20-year-old self just would have no idea what I'm talking about. He'd be like, what? Safety is going to create the best sex of your life? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
I think that's incredibly well said. Like I had this partner, my last person I was dating, I guess, and he came to the table with this like sexual tantric energy that I normally I was the one always bringing that to the table, and people would be like, what the fuck was that? Like, what was that sex we just had? Like, and I've always been searching for someone to kind of meet me at that level, and he did. And so it was like, I didn't know sex could be like that. I didn't know sex could be that purposeful, that intentional. It was like it was womb healing for me, and my
Huh.
interactions with him just felt like they healed. I mean, 20 plus years of sexual trauma and sexual abuse, and like all the ways in which people I didn't know have hurt me, and like it was just so powerful that
Hmm.
I'm so grateful he didn't work out, because I mean, I'm grateful to have experienced him, right? And that
Hmm.
he was a very important person in my journey, and to honor that, and be grateful for that time. He's still a friend of mine to this day, and I love him very much. But yeah, interesting how my younger self also would have probably not fully understood. And it's like you just I want to run around and like tell kids like, stop watching porn, like, stop. I stopped watching porn. I stopped watching porn like a year and a half ago. But I almost feel like I'm like programmed from all the porn that I did watch, of like all the ridiculous shit that I still think about then when I'm having sex sometimes. But yeah, stop watching porn. Like they really don't want to be smacked the first time you have sex with them. Like they
Mm,
want to be treated kindly and held, and they want eye contact, and they want, try breathing together. Like just
mm.
some basics. See what happens. See how that intimacy builds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's super like edgy as well. Like like young people always like edgy shit. Like breathe with someone and take it slow and enjoy that and see how fucking edgy that is, because it's actually
Mm.
edgy. Like that level of intimacy is edgy. So you want something to explore, like go explore those edges and see where they take you, because like they'll just take you to places that you didn't even know were possible. Where
What
like
make
smacking someone and in all the types of way that porn shows us to have sex is just like, that's gonna feel two dimensional. It's gonna feel like playing like a game on like a Sega Mega Drive or a Nintendo 64, or like just some like pretty basic graphics to what's actually possible. Like there's a whole world of higher definition that's possible for you, but you've got to you got to put the training wheels on, which is going to start with just like breathing with someone, and you know maybe learning meditation or qigong, or maybe exploring sexual mastery of like how these things are held in sacred containers, and explore your own sexual energy. Like what a whole
hmm,
exploration that I'm going to be exploring for a lifetime. And
yeah.
I'd rather have higher definition, higher connection, intimacy, and like I want that for the world. Like it's like just like when we explore healing through plant medicine, or somatics, or like whatever our healing modalities are that set us free in greater and greater capacities, we want to share it. And I think the sexual healing is certainly going to be a huge piece, as it has in my life, but I also sense that for the greater collective as well, because it's pretty fucking weird if we actually look at it. And it always felt
Hmm,
weird to me. I remember being a kid and getting given my first porn mag, and I was just like, something about this just doesn't feel right. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it
hmm.
just didn't feel right. It kind of felt weird. I was like, what? Like, I don't know. I couldn't explain it. And I'm glad that there's other alternatives for human beings emerging more and more at this time.
Yeah. And so I'm interested in how your healing journey and what you've explored and gained, and the conscious level that you exist at now, how that bleeds over into your work, and how that gets you to show up from a heart-centered place, and what does that look like for you?
Can you ask the question in a slightly
Sure.
different way
Yeah.
so I can
As I was
understand?
done, I was like, was there a question in that? Um, how how do you show up in your work now because of all of the healing work that you've done? So working with clients, how are you taking what you've learned and translating that into what you're coaching?
That's a great question. Thank you for your deeper exploration. Yeah, well, it's just like it's really hard to guide someone somewhere where I haven't been. So the
Mm,
deeper that I have been and go allows me to be able to. I feel like I'm like a conduit to translate information in a more effective manner that people are able to receive. I feel like I'm like a translator of healing tools and conscious exploration,
I
and
love that
bringing
description.
those, yeah, like bringing some of the modalities, because some of the spiritual language can throw people off
Hmm.
from like the traditions, whether it be shamanic traditions or Eastern traditions, that can like throw people off because they don't understand. Like we've been doing with Dr. John, when you're talking about deity yoga, like people don't really understand that what's happening there is you're doing attachment healing by imagining, the caregivers that you wish you had, or the qualities of the caregivers you had, and then internalizing that. Or people might not understand when you're building a relationship with sweet and bitter plants that you're also kind of doing attachment healing, that you're building a connection with these different energies that are also a part of us. And, I feel like what I do is I go learn and explore my own journey, and you know, take that information, whether it be from the shamanic traditions or Eastern traditions, or whether it be from kind of Western psychology, what I've learned in those spaces, and translating that information in a way that people can easily digest, easily apply, and easily understand. And that's that's all I really do. And then just hold both a powerful, loving, supportive container, because I know what's possible. Like, I've experienced it. So like, I can genuinely be someone who's like, at that point you're at right now, I understand it. And yes, it's fucking hard. And like, you're totally going to get through the other side of it as long as you continue. Like, you're going to get through this. And sometimes just like having that support, whether it be a moment of like, you've got this, or whether it be a moment of like holding someone in whatever they're going through, that in of itself can be incredibly healing. And I'd experience the benefits of that too, aside from any of the tools. Just having someone like genuinely listen to you, hear you, and cheer you on, for me, is just been life-changing. And like, I wish I had those tools and people in my life sooner. So it's a blessing that I actually get to be this support for other epic individuals who are creating so much badass shit in the world.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Well, and so how can my listeners work with you if they desire to do so? What's the best way to learn more about you? And
Yeah. Well, I think like for anyone getting into any type of container, whether it be plant medicine or whether it be with a coach or a therapist, is like, come explore and like, let's connect. So the best place to connect would be through social media. You can either check out if you're a YouTube person, just look up Rick William. If you're an Instagram person, look up Rick William. And my actual account name is I am Rick William. With a K. There's like loads of fake accounts going around on Instagram right now. So it's RickWilliam. That's my account. And that's the best place to connect. If you want some free, if you like what you see and you like the vibe, you can go on my website and there's tons of free resources. So we have, like different emotional regulation tools. There's different workshops that you can get. There's tons of stuff that are accessible for free. There's some low cost options as well for kind of deeper dives. And then if that's resonating with you and feels supportive of your journey, then you can apply to work with me one-on-one, and we can have a conversation about what that might look like in your life. So that's the recommendation of what I would do. It's, like, it's a big commitment to get into a plant medicine container or a coaching container or hybrid containers where where both of those coexist. So yeah, I'd recommend just like take it step by step, see if we vibe, and then let's take it from there.
fantastic. And I'll have all of those linked up in the show notes as well, so that people don't get confused and end up on the wrong Rick William. It's like, I wish I could do something better about all of those fake accounts, but
I know. Well, actually, I found it, like, me and my friend were having a conversation yesterday, and he just shared with me that Meta have they're launching, and we're still like, is this like a planned thing? But anyway, Meta are launching paid verification across all of their platforms. It's just going live in Australia and New Zealand right now. I think it's $20 a month. But we were like, are they just letting all of these fake accounts emerge so that we have the demand to all pay $20 a month to stop this happening? I don't know if that's true or not. It's definitely probably in the realms of possibility, but that's the solution that's coming. So
interesting. Well, yeah, and it's super annoying. I had 3 of them in the last year, 2 of them at the same time, and I mean, as much as I don't want people to get scammed by them, I also spend then half of my time on social media answering messages that people send me about, did you know? And I'm like, I knew. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
Thank you for thank you.
My
Please
pleasure.
report them.
It was a pleasure to be here with you and chat today. And just thank you for everyone who's listening. Like, thank you for walking the path. I truly believe we're all walking this together. So thank you to everyone's listening for all of your contributions, for everything you're doing, and look forward to connecting with some of you soon.
Yeah, and looking forward to holding class with you a lot further and continuing this journey. So, to be continued. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and review this podcast wherever you're listening. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me. Until next time.